What's up, everyone? I'm Justin.
And I'm Nick.
And we're Fantasy Football in the Zone. And in this video, we will be discussing our starts and sits of
Heading into week two.
But first, before we get into that, once again, a Thursday night game victory by 20 points.
Yeah.
Baltimore Ravens beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 26-6. And Le'Veon Bell, not a great week, but a good. If you're in a PPR, that had around 15 points, which is a solid week for
not
running
in
back
PPR, it was a little disappointing. He only had 10. And then on the other side, Justin Forsett didn't really do much, but Bernard Pierce had 96 yards.
Yeah, I think it's still going to be a committee, and at this point, I think they're both flex options depending the matchup.
Yeah,
moving on to receivers, Antonio Brown 90 yards, in receiving, but he also had a few rushing yards, and he actually got injured in a play, but he looked fine after that. Came back in the game. Steve Smith 71 yards. I think he could be a nice waiver wire pickup for a nice bench guy, possibly being a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, he's been putting together some nice games, and for a Thursday night game, 71 yards isn't bad.
For a wide receiver 3, I don't trust him more than that.
Let's move on to the quarterbacks, and Big Ben, he had no touchdowns and 217 yards. You concerned about him at all?
I mean, you're not starting Big Ben anyway. I mean, he's as a backup. I would trust him as a backup because he can put up around 20 points. But this one, I wasn't starting him against the Ravens, and I hope you guys didn't either. But as a backup, I would trust him like that. Joe Flacco, not too many yards, 166, but he did have 2 touchdowns. Pretty solid week, 2 weeks in a row, but I don't trust him as a one. Trust him as a backup. Agreed.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to our starts and sits. Nick, want to start things off?
Yeah, I'll start things off with the star quarterbacks. And first I'm going to start with Robert Griffin III. Although a lot of you didn't like him last week because of his performance against the Texans and his knee, I think with this matchup against Jacksonville, this is the perfect week for him to bounce back. And I think he's going to be throwing a lot in that game and maybe pick up a few rushing yards along the way. And my second star QB is Carson Palmer. He also had a big had a big game last week, and this week he's going up against the Giants. The Giants don't have the greatest secondary, and I think he's going to be using Fitz and Michael Floyd to his advantage and scoring a lot of points.
I agree with you, but RG3, if you have a guy like Nick Foles, I'm starting Nick Foles ahead of him, and that brings me to my star quarterbacks. I like Tom Brady going up against the Vikings. I think this is talking about bounce backs. Brady was always a top fantasy quarterback, but he definitely took a dive, but he also struggled against the Dolphins week 1. I think this is a good matchup versus Minnesota, and I definitely think he could put up a good around 25 points this week.
I agree.
And Nick Foles on Monday night. I don't know why. I love playing guys on Monday night. That's not the reason. Great matchup versus Indianapolis. I think this game could be a shootout. Love Andrew Luck also. Love Nick Foles. I think he could be put up. I think he might be just like outside top 5 quarterbacks in this week. I definitely think he might. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes into top 5 this week at quarterback. Really love the matchup versus Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's gonna.
What were you saying?
It's going to be a real passing game. Now, let's move on to the sits. My 6 QBs are Phillip Rivers and E.J. Manuel. Phillip Rivers is going up against Seattle. And Aaron Rodgers, he was going up against Seattle last week, and he only scored about 11. So I don't think I would be starting Phillip Rivers either. I really don't like the matchup. The Legion of Boom is great, and I really don't see many opportunities with Sherman and Earl Thomas back there. And my second guy is E.J. Manuel. He did have a decent week last week against the Bears, but I think the Dolphins are going to provide him with a tough defense this week.
My 6 quarterbacks, I agree with you. Derek Carr, I definitely think there's better options out there. I really don't see the need to play Derek Carr. Texans defense, it's not the worst. Pretty good secondary. Jonathan Joseph. They don't have the best, but they don't have the worst. And the Raiders, they don't have really too many weapons. James Jones had that crazy one-hand grab, but they really don't have too many weapons for me to trust. Trust a rookie quarterback. Or maybe if you're in a 2 quarterback league, Other than that, I just don't see the need to play him. And my other sit is Jay Cutler. I thought Jay Cutler would have a much better week against Buffalo. He proved me wrong. He didn't have the worst, but I definitely had higher expectations. And now he's playing the 49ers. I really don't. I'm not big on the matchup. 49ers defense definitely took a dive also, but I just don't think he could have a big week against the Niners, especially if Jeffrey doesn't play. But if you don't have a better option, of course, you can't bench Cutler.
Yeah, I agree. Really, Cutler, I think he's a one. But if you don't have a better option, you have to do what you have to do and start him.
Start running backs?
Oh, yeah, I was just about to say that. And my first start running back is Shane Vereen. Like you said with Tom Brady, I love the matchup against Minnesota, especially in PPR. I consider this guy a mid, high end two. I think he's a really good two. He catches a lot of passes, and Belichick loves to use his running backs. My second guy is Darren Sproles. Like you said with Nick Foles, I love the matchup. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game, and like Shane Vereen in a PPR league, he's going to be catching a lot of passes.
I agree. Two great PPR running backs who you might not have to start because you might have three crazy running backs. But if you need a flex option, I love those guys. And my start running backs of Alfred Morris. I love the matchup this week against Jacksonville. I definitely think he scores double-digit points and maybe could be a top 10 running back this week in fantasy points. And love Andre Ellington also. Andre Ellington, he had a solid week last week, and he wasn't 100%. He's playing the Giants this week, and I definitely think he could have a nice week, and I definitely think he could be a high-end running back too. And now moving on to the sit running backs, you want to start?
Yeah, I also agree with you with Ellington. I love the matchup. The Giants really don't have a good running defense. And targeting the Chargers again, I don't like Ryan Matthews this week. He's going up against Seattle, and you saw last week Eddie Lacy couldn't do anything with Seattle, so I have really no reason to be starting Ryan Matthews. I think Seattle's going to limit them and a lot of loss of yards. And my second sit running back is Mark Ingram. I really don't like the matchup this week against the Browns, and he hasn't shown me enough where if you're going up against a tough matchup and you own him, to start him.
I agree with you. My sit running backs are Reggie Bush and Zach Stacy. Reggie Bush going up against a tough run stopping defense in Carolina, and I'm not big against I'm not high on Zach Stacy this week. He struggled a bit last week, saw a little less carries than most expected, going up against a pretty solid run defense in Tampa Bay. You're probably not going to be able to start sit Zach Stacy's most likely a RB2, and beware when you start him. Don't expect a huge week out of him. And now moving on to the start wide receivers, Nick.
Yeah, my start wide receivers this week are Pierre Garçon and Andre Johnson. Pierre Garçon, I love the matchup this week. They're going up against Jacksonville, and for the same reasons, I basically have a Griffin. I think, like I said with Griffin, they have a good matchup. Yeah. And I think RG3 is going to be using Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson a lot to rack up points. I love him, especially in PPR. And then my next guy is Andre Johnson. He's going up against the Raiders, who don't really have the best secondary. And although Andre Johnson didn't do that much last week, I expect a big week from him this week.
My start wide receivers are Percy Harvin and Jeremy Maclin, and these are two guys who aren't your wide receiver ones, wide receiver twos. But I think Percy could be in that. I think he can be a wide receiver two. But Jeremy Maclin, I think he's a nice wide receiver three. Love the matchup. Like going back to the Monday night game, Colts Eagles, going to be a shootout. And I love Maclin this week. I think he could be a high end three, low end two this week in points. I think maybe if you don't have that stud wide receiver two, you could play Maclin there and expect good numbers. And Seattle, Percy Harvin, you saw they used him last week. I'm thrilled if you're a Percy Harvin owner. Loved how they used him in a pretty good matchup against the San Diego.
Yeah, I love pretty much everyone going in that Monday night game. And
play them all, everyone. Yeah. Play them all. Sit wide receivers, Nick?
My sit wide receivers, well, my first guy isn't really a sit. Like last week, I'm going to say beware of Keenan Allen. I'm targeting the Chargers again, but He's going up against Richard Sherman, and I know Richard Sherman isn't God, where he's going to completely shut him down, because Keenan Allen's a stud.
But also, like you said, you're talking all these charges because we all see how Seahawks are playing. They are dominating, guys. They're shutting people down. They've limited Rodgers, an elite quarterback, to 12 points.
Eddie Lacy,
of course you got to be scared of this matchup. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, I really don't like any Chargers this week. And then my second guy is, everyone may not be starting him, but Greg Jennings. If you liked the big week last week and got him off the waiver wire, he has a tough matchup with Revis this week.
I agree. Yeah. My two wide receivers, Marcus Colston, Victor Cruz. Victor Cruz, he had high expectations as a wide receiver too. Didn't quite perform up to his expectations in week 1.
Only 5 points.
Yeah, I'm not happy with Victor Cruz. Tough matchup, and I just think there's better options going forward. He's going up against Patrick Peterson, and if he couldn't perform against the Lions, I don't think he could perform against the great Cardinals secondary. And Marcus Colston, I just think there's better options out there. I really like Brandon Cooks, and Marcus Colston's going up against Joe Hayden, so he should be limited. I think they're moving on the Saints, and I definitely think Brandon Cooks is going to emerge as their top receiver.
Yeah, and let's move on to the star tight ends. My first star tight end is Greg Olsen. It's going to be a high-scoring game with the Lions, and I think Cam Newton likes him a lot. He's going to throw to him a lot. And my second guy is Jason Witten. I like the matchup this week. And although last week, don't get scared of his 5-6 point performance, but he's going up against the Titans, and he's still Romo's security blanket. I still like him. Now you want to?
Yeah, my star tight end is Zach Ertz. Once again, you're talking the Chargers. I love the matchup on Monday night. I love it. The Colts, Eagles. It is going to be a throwing fest. Of course, the running backs are going to perform. LaShawn McCoy. Don't really trust Trent Richardson, but this is a great matchup for quarterbacks, wide receivers. Zach Ertz had a touchdown catch last week, and Zach Ertz is Nick Foles' main tight end. I think he could perform, and I think he's a mid-tight end 1 for this game.
Yeah, and now let's move on to sit tight ends, and this will be I promise.
Sorry about that. My other star tight end is Dwayne Allen. I forgot to mention him. And Eagles Colts once again. Love the matchup once again. I know I said that 1,000 times, but I think the Colts are going to be throwing at just as much as the Eagles, and I expect Dwayne Allen to put up good numbers too. But you're not going to start him over Jimmy Graham. But if you if you had Jordan Reed, for example, I plug in Dwayne Allen this week.
Yeah, and
sorry about that, Nick.
It's fine. My sit tight end is for the last time. I'm going to target the Chargers. Antonio Gates. I really think he's done. I think he shouldn't really even be on your roster. I like Ladarius Green better than him, and I just feel like he's not going to do anything this week or pretty much any week for the rest of the season.
Well, he did have a pretty good week last week, but once again, great Seahawks defense. I don't think he has no value. I think he has somewhat value. I think he could be a nice low-end 1 tight end, but I definitely think, moving on, I definitely think Ladarius Green is going to see more targets at the end of the season because I don't think he could hold up to 16-week season anymore. Antonio Gates. My sit tight end is Jared Cook. Not high on him this week against the Bucks, and Eric Ebron against the Panthers. Pretty good linebacking core. I don't think he's gonna. I just don't trust either one of these this week. I definitely think there's better options like Dwayne Allen out there. And now sleeper defense, Nick.
Yeah, time to wrap things up. And my sleeper defense is the Bucks. Going up against the Rams. I like this matchup, and Minnesota blew them out and held them to only 6 points.
Last week, my sleeper deep was the Vikings against the Rams, and it happened to pay off. I just don't like Sean Hill enough. He even got benched because he got injured. But I just don't see much value. I agree with you.
And
the Bucks defense. Dolphins, I just don't think E.J. Manuel is gonna get enough points this week. I think the Dolphins Bills are gonna be like a 17-14 game. I don't think it's gonna be that high of a score. And that should do it here. I'm Justin, you're Nick, and thank you for watching, everyone.